All right. Now, last but certainly not least, I have the distinct honor of introducing Becca Tarnas. Becca got her BA, a dual degree at Mount Holyoke in environmental science and theater. She then came to CIIS, where she got her master's in PCC, and is now working on her doctoral degree in the Ecology, Spirituality, and Religions program, which Elizabeth Allison chairs. Becca's research is focused on Carl Jung and J.R.R. Tolkien. She is exploring each of their read books, looking for the structure, the ontological structure, you might say, of the imagination, using these two figures focused on as exemplars of how the collective unconscious erupts into consciousness through the form of art that Jung produced and the form of art that Tolkien produced. Today she's going to share some other interests of hers. She's an archetypal astrologer, and I think one way that her dual degree at Mount Holyoke comes through, again in environmental science and theater, is that, as you'll see today, she's going to explore the archetypal drama of the cosmos itself, using Whitehead's cosmology as a kind of descriptive aid to articulate an archetypal cosmology in other complementary terms. I'm very excited to hear Becca and to see what everyone thinks of the amazing idea she's going to share with us. So please welcome Becca.
Well, I want to thank all of you for being here at this long arc and the last presentation in this track. I just so appreciate seeing some of your faces here at the end of the warm day. And also, Matt, all of the effort that you've put into creating this track and being able to see it firsthand and all the work you've put in, so thank you. And then finally to all the presenters in this track, it's just been amazing 3 days to see all of the ideas present in a way that they're synthesizing and expressing something even greater than any one of us could say alone. So this conference, it's titled Seizing an Alternative, and that title implies that the alternative is already here to be seized. It's not something that new that must be invented. The alternative's been present all along. It's been waiting, maybe urging us even to open our imaginations to the possibility that this alternative is, in a sense, the very essence, the hidden essence of our world. At this conference, our larger section has been addressing the alienation from the rest of the cosmos felt by the human being in late modernity. And each talk in our track has been revealing in its own way the deep interconnection that has always been present between us and our world. We are our world. And the cosmic web, it hasn't been cut. Although part of our human journey seems to be to feel as though the threads of our existence have been severed. So in 1983, a conference was held at this same university. It was organized primarily by Kathy Keller and David Ray Griffin. And the conference was called Archetypal Process. And they sought to bring into dialogue the process philosophy of Whitehead and the archetypal psychology of Carl Jung and James Hillman. As David Ray Griffin pointed out, process philosophy and archetypal psychology are both postmodern movements, but postmodern in a different sense from, and I'm quoting from Griffin here, the relativistic, nihilistic, deconstructive postmodernism that might better be called ultramodernism or postmodernism. Process philosophy and archetypal psychology, again in Griffin's words, are examples of a constructive, reconstructive, a visionary postmodernism, in which many of the presuppositions of modernity are challenged and revised. They're both postmodern movements that want to return soul and divinity to the world. In his talk at this conference, James Hillman spoke of the need for a metaphysics that could support archetypal psychology. Hillman had abandoned Jung's metaphysics in order to save his psychology, he said. Yet he found this, started talking about this idea of metaphysics and practice. So Hillman was looking for a metaphysics that supported the practice of psychology, the practice of soul-making, an alchemical metaphysics. It seems that Whitehead can provide such a metaphysics, a cosmology in which soul can do its work. Hillman spoke in his talk of that word, cosmology. It both, and I'm quoting from Hillman, it both refers to the astronomical order of the heavenly bodies and also has a metaphysical meaning, according to Whitehead's process of reality. As Whitehead says, cosmology is a scheme of general ideas in terms of which every element of our experience can be interpreted. What if we do as Hillman suggested and keep together the two meanings, astronomical and metaphysical? Allow me to quote Hillman for a moment in his ever-eloquent stylings on what it would mean to maintain the unity of the two meanings of the word cosmology. This is Hillman from what he said at the Archetypal Process conference. Let us say that the astronomical bodies, the planets, offer metaphysical bodies, the gods, or one might say the archetypes, by means of whom every element of experience can be interpreted. What is beyond in both meanings are the heavenly bodies. These afford some nouns and adjectives, some processes and some realities. It's totally Hillman's way of bringing Whitehead into his language. The planetary persons fill the void of the beyond with the myths of their bodies and the bodies of their myths. This cosmology is a psychological field. A field because metaphysics is placed in imaginal locations. Psychological because the planets are persons with traits, with behaviors, and in relation to one another. So Hillman is offering us a vision of an archetypal cosmology, an archetypally patterned, astronomically grounded cosmology. In his work with Stan Groff on non-ordinary and expanded states of consciousness, Rick Tarnas came to find, in his words, a highly significant, indeed a pervasive correspondence between planetary movements and human affairs. What is the at one's birth, as well as in the transiting movement of the planets in relation to the birth chart throughout one's life, and the ever-changing dynamics of the planets' relational positions to each other? It's a correspondence of an archetypal character, archetypal astrology. It is a continuously ongoing, universally visible form of synchronicity, what Jung describes as a meaningful coincidence between an inner event and an outer event. Archetypal astrology is an empirically based, yet mythopoetically informed practice, tracking the ongoing archetypal interconnection between psyche and cosmos, microcosm and macrocosm. While Rick and others have put forward substantial evidence for the astrological perspective, demonstrating the multifaceted ways in which astrology works, today I want to explore another question. Why does astrology work? What does the recognition of the highly precise, yet poetically subtle correspondence between planetary movements and events on Earth indicate about the nature of the cosmos? In dialogue with this question, Whitehead's process philosophy can, perhaps, offer us a metaphysical foundation. Before moving forward, a word on the nature of archetypes. Perhaps this can be best conveyed by Jung himself, the Greek diviner of the archetypal patterning of the human psyche. So to quote Jung, a kind of fluid interpenetration belongs to the very nature of all archetypes. They can only be roughly circumscribed at best. Their living meaning comes out more from their presentation as a whole than from a single formulation. Every attempt to focus them more sharply is immediately punished with the intangible core of meaning losing its luminosity. No archetype can be reduced to a simple formula. It is a vessel which we can never empty and never fill. It has a potential existence only, and when it takes shape and matter, it is no longer what it was. It persists throughout the ages and requires interpreting anew. The archetypes are the imperishable elements of the unconscious, but they change shape continually. As this quote from Jung illustrates, it's the very nature of archetypes to not be fully definable and describable, without misrepresenting them and dulling their divine luminosity. So moving forward, I want to acknowledge the impossibility of capturing archetypal presence in a single metaphysical system that explains in totality how they operate in the world. In his introduction to the book that emerged from the Archetypal Process conference, David Ray Griffin draws a parallel between Jung's concept of archetypes and Whitehead's concept of eternal objects, each being part of an explanation of formal causation. For Whitehead, an eternal object is, and these are Whitehead's words, any entity whose conceptual recognition does not involve a necessary reference to any definite actual entities of the temporal world. So an eternal object is a potentiality relevant to some actual occasion, a possibility not yet defined as actuality. Eternal objects are like Platonic forms in that they are real apart from any of their particular expressions, but unlike Plato's forms, their reality is, in Whitehead's words, deficient in actuality. Because of this deficiency, eternal objects long to enter into actuality, to ingress into actual occasions. All the ways in which we describe this world, the adjectives, these are the eternal objects. Colors, shapes, feelings, smells, tastes, qualities. Archetypes we come to understand through the pages being stuck together. Archetypes we come to understand through such qualities. But archetypes are the unifying fields or gravitational attractors that draw together a complex array of eternal objects into a singular though always fluid form. Grant Maxwell, who spoke yesterday in this track, has written about the relation between Whitehead's eternal objects and Jung's archetypes. Grant posits that the planetary archetypes and eternal objects are both examples of formal causation, a mode of causality that's forbidden by modern materialism. He also suggests that they should not be directly equated, and I agree. I would speculate that the planetary archetypes include both the potentiality of Whitehead's eternal objects and the incarnate experience of actual occasions. They encompass both all the way through. Archetypes are not just eternal objects or potentials because they would seem to have more agency and autonomy than Whitehead grants to eternal objects. Archetypes are complex personalities, persons even, in Hellman's language, yet there is a metaphorical unity to their complexity. All ways of speaking of archetypes, Hellman writes, are translations from one metaphor to another. To explore metaphor more deeply, we can take a slight turn toward Owen Barfield, the anthroposophically informed philosopher who wrote such works as Saving Appearances and Poetic Diction. Barfield posits an understanding of the evolution of consciousness in which the physical and psychical, material and spiritual, bodily and ensouled qualities of all entities in the world were once unified in the experience of ancient human consciousness. So over the slow course of history, these concepts have been separated from one another, subjective from objective, so that even now my language describing it to you inherently reflects this split. So I must speak of object and subject, body and soul. To give an example, Barfield uses to illustrate this. When we translate the Latin word spiritus into English, spiritus can mean wind, breath, or spirit, depending on the context. Yet for the ancient speakers of the word spiritus, it meant all three of these words, and perhaps more meanings, all at once, in that single utterance of spiritus. They were a unified whole in which the physical is utterly indistinguishable from its psychical and soul presence. Yet these words are inherently related to one their source. They are examples of true metaphor in Barfield's understanding. The way certain eternal objects complexify and egress as archetypal beings, I would say, is an example of such true metaphor. As Hillman says, all ways of speaking of archetypes are translations from one metaphor to another. So the infinite array of eternal objects that express the qualities of Saturn, or Venus, or Neptune, or any of the other planetary archetypes are metaphorically related to one another, a relation that was much more apparent to ancient consciousness than to modern consciousness. This is how the ancients knew what names to give to planets, which physical planets belong to which gods, because the meaning of the celestial bodies was directly apparent to them. The world has changed because we have changed in our participation with it, yet it still continues to change. The music of the spheres may have been silent for many in late modernity, yet now, the turn of the tides, we're beginning to relearn the score. For Whitehead, the source of all things is creativity. Creativity is primary. Creativity is the realm of pure potential, chaos. Griffin has referred to Whitehead's philosophy as process theology. I'm quoting Griffin here. Especially when the chief focus is on God and other questions of ultimate concern, such as ultimate origin, order, value, meaning. In Whitehead's scheme, God is not the ultimate. Creativity is. God is that which orders the chaos of pure potentiality into the hierarchy of eternal objects, and I would posit orders them into the archetypes. God takes chaos and turns it into cosmos, but God is born of that chaos. God is the first concrescence, an everlasting concrescence, the first experiential achievement of chaos becoming cosmos. An image I find compelling to illustrate this, chaos becoming cosmos, is that of a prism refracting white light into an iridescent rainbow. The white light is that realm of pure potentiality, chaotic creativity. In Whitehead's scheme, the prism itself is God, that which refracts the indefinite into the definite, that differentiates pure light into the colors of the rainbow. Each color is an archetype. Red, clearly different from blue, yellow distinct from purple, but within the band of light, of green, that could be seen as every possible eternal object that could ingress as an expression of Venus. And every shade of blue, the endless possibilities of Neptune. They're still the same light as the white light, but the prism, which could be identified as God or the divine or whatever it is that for you makes that refraction happen, has ordered them into these colors. I was thinking the other day, what is it that makes a rainbow so spectacular? Why do we stop and take notice of them and we get people to stop around us and just pay attention, that prayerful moment? It's because we can see them. A rainbow makes light visible. The rainbow is a symbol of divine possibility entering into the world and yearning for our participation in its beauty. The moment that a child takes her first breath can be seen as the first concrescence of that child independently of the mother's body. Now, the child herself is a society of actual occasions, each of which are also concressing in this moment, making up the full experience of the newborn. So this moment, the first inhalation, is when the birth chart of an individual is set. So the archetypal energies expressed through the rest of an individual's life reflect the planetary configurations, the archetypal relationships, or eternal potentialities of this particular moment. At the time of birth, all of the actual occasions that have ever been, that have perished into objective immortality, to use Whitehead's term, become one. apprehended by the actual occasion that is the newborn child in that moment, before also perishing. Every archetypal expression that is ever manifested is gifted to that child in that moment. Yet the past actual occasions that are most felt by the concressing actual occasion are those that are immediately prior. So thus the positions of the planets and their correlated archetypal energies that are being enacted everywhere upon the earth in that moment are what is most immediately inherited by the child in her first moment of independence. And then as the child continues to live and grow, her subjectivity, that crest of her compressing wave, continues to inherit the archetypally ordered actual occasions, as can be seen in the unfolding of astrological transits throughout one's life. Yet the birth chart's still effective and can still be seen also in the progression of the individual's life. How can this be so? How can a past actual occasion from the moment of birth be more archetypally influential than other past actual occasions? Here I want to return to the image of God as an eternally compressing actual occasion, never perishing or continuously feeling the procession of the cosmic community of finite actual occasions. Perhaps in this understanding of God, we can glimpse what may be happening in relation to the actual occasion when the individual's birth chart is set. It's almost like the actual occasion that compressed with the first child's intake of air is also an everlasting concrescence, one that continues from that moment forward. Each preceding concrescence takes place within the gestalt set by that first concrescence, which is how transits to the birth chart could still be experienced by the individual. It's the relationship of the ongoing concrescences to that first concrescence when the birth chart is set. The birth chart is like the prism of that individual's life, refracting the archetypal potential into the archetypal particulars of that person. That moment when the birth chart is set compresses onward, even beyond the bodily death of the individual. We see transits to the birth chart still being operative long after the person carrying the chart has died. For instance, when a renaissance of interest in someone's work occurs long after their death. As an example, and forgive my more technical astrological language for a moment, those who follow this, please do. As this conference is being held right now, Neptune in the sky is exactly crossing Whitehead's Mercury-Uranus square, bringing a revisioning and reimagining of worldview, which relates to Neptune-Uranus, to Whitehead's ingenious philosophical system, which relates to Mercury-Uranus. Whitehead has passed long ago, but his birth chart we're seeing unfolding at this conference and the transits to his chart in this very moment. So, like the dipolar nature of Whitehead's God, the archetypes too seem to have a primordial pole and a consequent pole. The primordial pole orders the realm of eternal objects so that they can ingress as relevant possibilities into the actual occasions of the cosmic community, while the consequent pole feels the experiences of this world community and continuously adjusts the ordering of the eternal objects. So too, I believe it is with the archetypes, for as they ingress into living manifestation, we participate in their becoming. We co-creatively engage their archetypal qualities through our own lives. The archetypes also have a consequent nature, one that feels what we feel, and that forever reshapes the possibilities and the potentialities of the future ingression of those archetypes in our own lives and in the lives of future generations. So our participation is enacting an evolution in the archetypes themselves. It's that prayerful moment that Jonathan was speaking about yesterday that we can engage in even when we're feeling horrible, even when we're facing the most difficult things. It's not that the prayer is always just being good or just being present. We're still enacting that and living into those moments, whether it's moments of great joy or great sorrow or struggle. So we're being called upon to seize an alternative. We're being called upon to participate in this way. And by consciously engaging with the archetypes, we co-creatively manifest them. We're reshaping the potentialities with which they will manifest in the future. And no future is yet set. But the past occasions that will inform it are here right now. A rainbow makes white light visible. So let's look forward with eyes open. Questions, discussions, talking.
I'd just like to make an opening comment. I have thought all of my life that I would like to address why astrology works, and I never had the nerve. And you not only had the courage, but you did it beautifully. It's very, very impressive. I hope we get a chance to read this and think about it and result come out very beautifully done.
It took me a while to build up the nerve. I didn't even think to myself. I was talking about this till less than a week ago. I was like, oh yeah, this is what I'm talking about.
One thing I find really interesting in the history of astrology is not only the planetary transits, but there's an archetypal significance of when planets are discovered. Up until the 1700s, we had 7 planets, and then in the late 1700s, right, like between the American and French revolutions, Uranus was discovered, which those revolutions embodied this Uranian archetype. And then the fact that its discovery, adding an 8th planet, messed up the whole system of astrology people were used to, which is itself a Uranian characteristic. And then in the 1800s, there was Neptune, right, as film and photography were coming into being, and you had this all these occult groups like the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and Theosophy and things like that going on, spiritualism. And so it kind of, when I look at astrology, I see it actually as more of a kernel of a much larger thing. It's the best science of synchronicity we have. But I feel like it kind of opens the doors to the story of greater synchronicities all around us, because the synchronicities are not limited to the stars. They're just some of the most reliable ones we can look to. So.
And often, and those synchronicities that we notice without any conscious relation to what the transits might be, you can look at them later and recognize also how they're expressing an archetypal quality.
That was wonderful, Becca. To your knowledge, are you the first one to propose that the pantheon of gods, not just the monotheistic God, has a primordial and consequent nature? That's if so, I think that's a particularly brilliant move. And I look forward to myself thinking about that and hopefully talking to you about it. But also, did you also say that so I see a kind of fractal or holographic image that I'm getting from your presentation, from the absolute God to the pantheon, but also the individual as a community, as the person as an actualization that also has a primordial nature and a consequent nature. So the primordial nature reflected in the birth chart. Is that what you're saying?
I hadn't exactly put in those terms, but that makes sense.
Okay, so that's what I was getting from you. So I think you did say that, if not explicitly, it's certainly implied in what you were saying. So I'm just reflecting that back to you, saying that's really neat.
Comment? I thought it was really beautiful the way you talked about Whitehead's God ingressing the eternal objects. So we know that Whitehead identifies God as the Eros of the universe, and yesterday we were talking about correspondences between Eros and Faunus in the Orphic Theogony. W.K.C. Guthrie makes that correspondence between Eros and Faunus, and Faunus as world revealer. In the Orphic Theogony, he's the child of chaos and night, and we were talking about this sort of first concrescence coming from chaos. There's a beautiful passage in Iamblichus, in the Mysterious, where he describes Eros as the force which brings the souls of the gods into men. And I was thinking of that, like, as sort of this drawing in of the archetypes, like using the name of Whitehead's God as this sort of delivery mechanism. Not mechanism.
Our language,
Vital channel.
our language always reflects what we're coming out of. I'm still really just sitting with these ideas and letting them work on me and see what happens. The idea of God as prism, describing the prism as Eros, which is an expression of Venus. You could describe the prism as time, as Chronos, because you need time to have relationship, for things to be in relationship. And I think, in a way, the prism could be an expression of all the archetypes as if they are differentiating themselves. And the chaos that is being differentiated is also all of the archetypal potential, but completely unified. That everything is present and yet to be born and brought forward. So yes, it's an expression of Eros, and I think it's an expression of so many other things as well.
A little bit reluctant to try to formulate this question to my best. Okay, so I understand the archetypal nature of the gods, and I understand the celestial perfection within which they were understood by the ancients. And I understand your sense that those archetypal qualities, could affect the moment of birth, the birth chart. But I don't know if I got, classical astrology says that it's the position of the planets that have the effect on us. Are you taking that literally, or are you looking more at the archetypal the presences that are available at the moment of birth in the birth chart?
To take.
I don't know if that makes sense or not.
No, it does make sense.
Okay.
And, to take an image from Rick of the positions of the planets are like the hands of a clock that indicate what time it is, but don't cause it physically to be that way. And my understanding, at least, is that it's archetypal through and through, that the patterning is present the patterning is present, and the positions of the planets reflect it, and we all reflect it, not as a this is where causality gets so tricky, because it's not that the physical bodies are
It's not a physical force.
exactly, but rather an orchestrated patterning that runs through the entire organism of the solar system. I hope that kind of helps.
Yeah.
Everything breathes together.
Yeah. I think so. It's a tough concept to get your head around. In any case, like I said, you're sort of sitting with it. But I like that direction. It makes more sense to me than some thought of the planets having some physical force on us. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I know that Hillman talks about the power of myth is partially because it's not literally true. It invites you into the imagination, and the concretization of that is this mundus imaginalis program. And I wonder if you've been thinking about astrology from the point of view of the mundus imaginalis period.
From my own understanding of the mundus imaginalis, which comes a little from Corbin and Hillman and others, is that in the same way that there's a kind of permeating through and through of archetypal patterning, that the world of the imagination is present everywhere as well. Corbin has this image of going inward as far as you can, and then you end up at Mount Calf, in the world of the imagination. You go in, and then suddenly the whole world turns inside out. And in a way, it's the same with astrology, that you go in and start to recognize your own psychic patternings, and suddenly you're on the outside of the largest movements of our solar system. I think there's a really intimate relationship between the mundus imaginalis and the archetypal world, and I don't necessarily think they can be separated out from all the rest of the world around us.
I guess I wanted to put those words into the room
Yes.
as much as anything, as another way of working with this issue of literal versus physical and whatever. But and as a contribution to the alternative cultures we're talking about, if that might be a useful way to help cultivate our imaginations collectively.
One of my driving questions is what is the imagination, and I certainly hold the imagination to be real, which is different than literal,
Yes.
and exploring that is one of my favorite things.
That was a fascinating talk. So thank you. When you were starting out, for the first half or 2/3, it was sounding very like the archetypes, along with the primordial nature of God. That it was very much like moving from that sphere of God, or the archetypes to like the world, right? So it was informing, it was the patterns, which is sort of the early Whiteheadian understanding of God. But then I was so glad, to me, it all came together at the end when you recognize the dipolarity of those things. So they're not just forming us, right? So we're not just like passive, sort of, just playing out these archetypal stories, right? Kind of like almost like puppets of fate, right? But we are actually reforming them too, so that the free decision making and the ways we guide our own path spontaneously is then being fed back into those archetypes. And as you so articulate, those are in a state of transformation themselves, right? And I think that's really important, because a lot of people read Whitehead's divinity very much in terms of the primordial nature, and they forget that consequent, like, divinity is as much about receptivity, right, as anything. And so there's no creation without, like, it's always an interaction between process, right? There is a state of evolution. Now it's a slower state, and this is what I loved about like your ideas, right? These are like these like almost like the continental plates, right, of the symbolic structure of our, they're moving, but they're moving really slowly, and there's these patterns that run through all these different civilizations and cultures, right? So beautiful. And just a couple thoughts on the question of the literal planetarity, those things. One way I have of thinking about it, and this just kind of jumped in my head, but in terms of like the way Aboriginal spirituality thinks about how much your birthplace, the place of your birth, is at the intersection of meridians of energy, right, running through the earth, right, the sort of the song lines, right, or the dreamings, right, and that has everything to do with the person you are. You emerge because of your place. Now, all we're really doing, it seems like with astrology, is expanding that place to include these cosmic systems with these energy flows, right? So to me, it's like it's place-based, which is completely ecological. It's just a much bigger ecology. And I know I'm talking a lot, but one tiny more little thing to add on, which is kind of a random little trivia, but I just went to see this. I saw this talk in this conference on this guy did astrobiology and process thought, and he said that there's actually proof about how certain kind of cosmological features, certain energy systems, really intense like energy systems of stars and quasars. There's one in particular where if it wasn't in the particular vicinity and relation of the solar system that it exerts such a powerful magnetic force that it's actually the shape of our DNA would be different if it weren't there. This is like cutting edge science. Like these are like NASA scientists that have like figured this out. So I'm like, if that can be the case, if something like that can have the specific nature and set of energy flows of our solar system can be impacted that way, of course, like the planets are gonna like be, like. So, anyways, that's thank you.
Yeah, was what I just want to go back to what you're saying about the place, because when we calculate someone's birth chart, it's not only the time, it's the place, and you see in the mandala of the chart, the line going this way is the horizon line, and so the place is essential, and the Earth is a planet too in the system. The whole thing is calculated based on a relationship to the Earth, and then I think the implications of fully participating in the archetypal energies present, participating in the world transits, knowing what's going on right now, and living as fully into those possibilities has huge ecological implications. For generations, knowing what outer planet aspects they're born with, to engage with those energies and recognize what their gifts are to be able to bring to a civilization in crisis, and know that they have those gifts because they know that they carry these archetypal qualities as individuals and as generations. So I think it's that consequent nature, that consequent pull is essential for calling us to participate. It's like by recognizing this archetypal patterning, it's a recognition that we have to live into this. We're being called to live into it because this is the structure of the cosmos that we get to live in.
I just wanted just a quick comment. You started in the beginning of your paper kind of suggesting that the alternative that we're seizing is already here, or that we already have these things, which kind of makes it sound like you were reporting on stuff that we already know about. But I just wanted to throw out, echoing Sean's point, that I don't think anybody else has done that. I think you've just made like several new contributions.
Tenure.
Let me finish my dissertation. Thank you. I mean, what I mean by it's already here is we're recognizing that this, that the archetypes have always been living through us, and we've been living through them, and just waking up to that reality. That's really what I mean by it's already here. But I really thank you.
I wouldn't want you to underplay that, because I think, as Sean mentioned, I really don't think anybody's done it.
Thank you so much, Becca.